Hey there, it's Cheryl, and it's a very, very special afternoon. I am so excited to welcome Sonia Wadhwa, Chief of Staff and Director of Business Management at Microsoft. Sonia, you've been in my world and on my radar for a couple years and part of my community. I am so grateful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for having me. And it's so nice to see you again after a while. And I'm excited about talking to you today.
Yes, we have a lot planned. And before we jump in and start to learn some of the gems of wisdom that you are going to share with us about the very, very important and timely topic about hiring, creating a diverse workforce, but then empowering them, because we had the conversation offline that diversity in it's not enough to have a diverse workforce. We need to have an inclusive workforce. So in your all of the successes that you've had at Microsoft, I'm excited to talk about that. But before we jump in and get these actionable tips that we can take with us for implementing real change, I wanted to first ask you a little bit about you, if you don't mind. Now, you have really climbed up to really a pinnacle of success in your career. And I was wondering, as a young person, what inspired you to study engineering, to study business, and to really put your head down and have an impact in this industry?
Sure. Yes. So I think it may be obvious, but I should share that I was born and brought up in India. I moved to US about 11 years back. So you can imagine a large part of my life I spent in India. When I think back on my childhood days, one of the memories, or rather, I should say, one of the things that has been most inspirational to me has been how I saw my mother work hard for my education. And I'll just give a little bit of context to that. Coming from the kind of culture that I was born into, a girl's education was typically very low priorities as compared to boys' education in a family. So when my mother wanted to put me through, I was probably 7 years old or something, maybe 6 or 7. She wanted to put me through a private school where I could get educated in an English medium school, which she thought would be a great start for my future life and my career. My father, as well as my grandmother, who controlled the finances at home, they put their foot down. It was not something they were willing to really. They loved me, of course. There was, never any two questions about that. But in their mind, the money would be better spent on maybe my brother's education, and for me on maybe my wedding, my marriage, which was a very important goal for girls, when I was younger. But my mom put her foot down and she said, "Hey, if you guys think you cannot financially support Sonia's education, I am going to start working." And then for the next several years, as I went through school and then college, my mom worked every single day. She was just a regular graduate. She had no professional qualifications. I saw her taking on a bunch of additional qualifications and rising herself from somebody who was just tutoring a couple of kids at home to the principal of a school, of a full-fledged school with like 2,000 kids. So she grew, she worked hard, and through that power of her hard work, she financed my education, of course. But the bigger thing for me was she became a role model to me in terms of somebody who was constantly reinventing herself, constantly growing, despite all the negative forces around her in many ways. And also, it made me super determined to prove to her that what she did for me was worth it, and to also prove to probably the world, I don't know who I was trying to prove it to, probably to myself, that I was worth the investment that was put into my education, and I'm going to make something of myself to, show as a proof. Yeah.
So that is amazing. And do you think, now that you're telling me that story, and we're going to have a conversation about mentorship in a moment, because I know that that's near and dear to your heart. But do you think the very thing that your mom did for you is really important to really empower our future female leaders, and especially leaders in the workplace who might even feel further marginalized?
Absolutely. I think I was fortunate that my own mother did it. But I do know that in many situations, circumstances, sometimes people just get sort of boxed by the ones who love them. And they are probably told, given direct or indirect messages that they can do only so much, or there's only so much, or only a certain direction that they're capable of taking in their life or their career. So that's where mentorship really comes into play. If you have somebody as a mentor, it could be a family member, it could be a teacher, it could be a boss, it could be anybody that you meet, anywhere in your life, and that person can really keep encouraging you, can remind you of your own power, can remind you of your potential, especially when we all go through low phases in our lives, in our careers. If there's somebody who reminds us constantly of what we can do, somebody who can point us to the doors that are available and can be opened with a little bit of effort, I think that can take the marginalized folks um, much, much farther than, just by virtue of education or finding a right job opportunity or a right business to work for.
Yeah, and that is so important. And I know when we were talking prior to going live, you were talking about you yourself were boxed in by people that loved you very much. And so when you take that notion along with the amazing example that your mom showed you and translate that into the workplace, what is something that we can start doing tomorrow that will help us make progress to a diverse, equitable, but also inclusive workplace?
I think, as I mentioned, I'll probably come back to the example of mentorship. Um, it is, in my mind, one of the most empowering things that anybody can get as a professional. And as I look back on my career in the early years, honestly, I did not have a mentor. Sure, my mom was there in my growing up years, and she sort of encouraged me, helped me. But beyond a point of time when I was on my own, I really wished, if I look back on my younger years, if I had a mentor who could have reminded me of my potential. There were times when I sort of almost gave up on my aspirations. So I think from that perspective, if we can find mentors for our younger people, for people that are more marginalized, for the quieter voices in the room, and also if people that are capable of being mentors, people that have life experiences or professional experiences, they can raise their hand to be mentors rather than being asked to be a mentor. So I would recommend folks to actually go out and seek people that they feel have that hidden potential, which can be exploited, which can be grown further, and go and offer their own learnings to them, go and offer, share their own stories with them. To me, that is one of the most important things we can do as companies, or, even otherwise, wherever we are trying to build diversity. In my mind, diversity is not just about increasing the numbers, about increasing or making our ratios better. It's a lot about how to then make those people, the diverse people that we hire, how to make them grow and thrive by creating an environment where they can grow and thrive.
Yeah, and that's an important message that you bring up. And it seems like you're saying that you don't need to be in the C staff or a vice president or a senior vice president and to have a mentor. If you've been there a little bit longer than the new person, then maybe that would qualify you to be a mentor. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like too, it'd be a good idea, not just for leaders to seek out mentees from different places than they might not normally look and take the initiative on that, but for others who might not see themselves as mentors to view themselves in a different light and through a different lens, and for them to take that initiative as well.
Absolutely. You nailed it, Cheryl. I think you do not have to have any kind of corporate title or a level of seniority or even a number of years of experience to be a mentor for someone. You will always, if you have the desire to help somebody and the desire to share your learnings and experiences, and also very importantly, you're willing to be vulnerable and sharing with somebody, no matter what level, what age, what title you are at, you will be able to find somebody that can benefit from your mentorship.
Yeah, that's so, so important. So, in other words, so putting my coach's hat on, if you take all of that amazing information and gold nuggets of wisdom that Sonia's sharing and go out there and set a goal for yourself of, every month I will check in on so many people, or in a certain period of time, I will take someone under my wing or do that, then I think that that could be incredibly powerful and have a huge ripple effect for an entire organization if people start seeing themselves and others in a different perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think mentorship opportunities are available not just in our workplaces. So you don't have to be working for a corporate like just Microsoft to be a mentor. There are a ton of opportunities available in via other medium. For example, I know I have people reached out to me on LinkedIn offering to help provide mentorship to students in some part of Africa. So I sign up for these kind of programs because I really want to help. I mean, it's a person I don't know. I've never seen them. I'll probably never see them in my life, right? But I want to be able to share as much as I can from my story with them and give them those little tips and tricks, or maybe share with them the mistakes that I made, which I really hope others don't. If I can be vulnerable about my story.
Yeah. And so if we've had a conversation about being vulnerable. Now I'm going to ask you a question that might make you a little uncomfortable, make you a little bit vulnerable. But if you were to coach your younger self, what would you say to your younger self in order to make your path a little bit easier? And thinking back to a time where maybe you stumbled, or maybe you made some mistakes, or maybe a job didn't work out, or what have you. So is there a piece of wisdom that you would share with your younger self?
Yes, there is a piece of wisdom I am constantly sharing with myself as I'm growing older every day. So my me as of yesterday was younger than what I am today, right? So, and that is really reminding myself about the struggle that I have personally faced in terms of being able to speak about my work, in terms of being able to reflect that sense of pride about what I do. And it's not just at work, it's also about who I am. That's my constant struggle, honestly. And here I am being vulnerable by sharing that. And I think, to me, that happens because of the sort of the upbringing and the culture I was brought up in. I was always taught that humility is a key virtue, and your work speaks for itself. You do not need to be shouting from the rooftops. So I know I cannot bring myself to shout from the rooftops, no matter how much I try, how many coaches I work with, or how many books I read about it. But every single day, I still have to very consciously remind myself to be proud of what I do, to be bold about communicating about it, and be very intentional about sharing what I do, because I feel like I lost on many opportunities which could have placed me, at a much better place than where I am. Not that I regret where I am, but I could have been better off if I had the courage to speak at the right time and share the authentic Sonia, let's say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, I agree with you 100%. And I'm so glad. Well, first of all, I'm grateful for you being very transparent. But it's so important that it's just really been proven in the social, in social psychology, that women do not speak about themselves. They're sometimes overly humble, and there's a way to be humble, but also a way to share your experience. And I just like to share a different perspective on that, because if women, not just women, but anyone who might feel like they're in a marginalized group, if we don't share what our black belt is, what we're passionate about, what we've done, then it's almost a disservice to everyone else in the room.
Yes.
Because no one's going to understand how you can help or what role might be better or something like that. And so what you brought up is very important. So I hope for anybody listening, and if you are watching live, we have the ability to take some questions. So please do drop them in the chat if you'd like to. But if you can take that wisdom to the bank, so to speak, and really start learning to share what you've done in a very authentic, and even humble way. But really the theme for this year for all of my, whether they're, whether I'm speaking or one-on-one clients or what have you, is really hone it and own it. There's a way to own your accomplishments in a way that is 100% appropriate, and also in a way that really serves the people that you are around. So I am so thankful that you brought that up. And of course, we have to have the conversation about mindset, just because that's who I am, and that's what I'm always very curious about. So what mindset has really allowed you to persevere and be resilient and get to where you are today?
This is something I'd say a mindset that I've developed over the years as I've grown more, I'd say, intentional about how I react to things. What I have noticed is that whenever something happens, which is where it is not right according to me, maybe, or the outcome is not what I wanted to see in a certain situation, instead of reacting immediately, which I used to, which the younger me used to do, if I take an intentional pause, if I take a deep breath, I take a little bit of time for introspection and some reflection on, I am able to change that outcome to what I feel is better, or to a more positive outcome in a much better way, and in the process cause less stress to myself and less heartburn to others involved in that whole situation. There was a time when I used to react, and I used to immediately find somebody else to blame for something that wasn't going the right way. But now I have learned that, the more, if I do that, I'm going to go down a spiral of negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it is take a pause, take a deep breath, sometimes acknowledge that, hey, I need to think about it, or I want to, just come back to this situation. I want to revisit this later at a later point of time. That mindset has helped a lot, I think. And I'm still learning. I wouldn't say I'm perfect. I learn every day.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like one thing that I talk about, and this might be in my terminology and not yours, but it really made me think about that you're highly emotionally agile. It means that you have a high awareness of your emotions, what triggers your emotions, but also agile, and how to take a pause and check them and kind of get back into the zone, so to speak.
Yeah, I like your terminology. I'll use it now.
Yeah.
I
just want to add that these are learned skills. So this is something that Sonia and others, they probably were not birthed into the world, with these skills. And so they can be learned by everyone. If you're thinking like, I don't know if I can do that, you absolutely can. Now, I just wanted to touch base too on, for hiring a diverse workforce. We were having the conversation earlier about what can we do? What's one thing we can do to find people? Because I was just on a panel for a resource summit, which is a summit in the financial services industry. And the whole summit was about diversity, equity, inclusion. And a lot of times financial advisors who are mainly men, and a lot of the women in there are white women. And so they're like, I understand we need to have a more diverse workforce, but I don't know about the talent pool. Like, they're having challenges with the talent pool. And so what would you say to that? And how can we hire better, a more diverse workforce? We talked about, once we hire them, how to make them more inclusive, but taking a step backwards, how can we hire a more diverse workforce going forward?
I think, and I'm going to acknowledge this, working at Microsoft, probably, we do have a lot of resources at our disposal, which help us find the right forums, the right programs, the right opportunities for diverse hiring. So I can completely understand, the struggle of somebody who may not have all those resources and those programs at their disposal. But I still feel like, you know, everywhere we go, especially in this day and age of social media and so much being out there in the open, it if we have the right intention to do it, a very sincere intention to hire diverse people, there is a ton of opportunity out there. Yeah, I can't comment so much on what that may be, because like I said, I'm fortunate to have so many of those programs running within my company, which I can go and leverage at any point of time. Though I will acknowledge that even hiring from those programs, it does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of planning. It does take a lot of building the right mindset. It also takes a lot of, even at training our interviewers, the folks that are actually at the front line of the hiring process. Like my role is more to support and find the opportunities to hire, but then there are people who are actually doing the interviews. So we do things like, for example, even training our interviewers how to ask the right questions that do not put a diverse candidate or a candidate that has a completely different background at a disadvantage. So whether it's a question in a coding exercise, programming, or it's a behavioral question in an interview, there are techniques to be used and behaviors that interviewers need to change to make sure that they are actually truly giving that candidate the opportunity to succeed through that interview process. Because what's the fun having a huge pipeline that a big company like ours can provide if we don't do a good job of the whole process of bringing those folks in?
Mm-hmm. So it seems like evaluating the hiring process, all the way from where you find them. And also, we had a conversation about maybe looking, you happen to have a lot of resources at Microsoft, but if it's a smaller company with not the resources, then maybe it needs to go beyond where we normally look and, make some efforts to look. We were talking about maybe there's, foster kids who have gotten scholarships to really amazing schools who are excelling in their schoolwork, or just, for example, just get used to looking in different areas. But this also too applies for leadership positions as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for example, going to schools that are known for diverse education. I could take an example of historically Black colleges and universities, HBCU, going to their conferences. They organize events pretty much regularly throughout the year, tying up with programs that are focusing on, students from financially underprivileged background, and giving them opportunities, even if the opportunity is in the form of a short internship that helps you gauge the potential of that talent and then later on hire them as full-time resources. Even on LinkedIn, as I mentioned, I sign up sometimes for programs, for mentoring programs. Those are also opportunities to be able to find that diverse talent. Otherwise, how could somebody like me be connected with somebody who's in Africa? Mm-hmm. So I think that there's surely a ton of opportunities out there, and we all of us who have those experiences, I think, and this speaks to me as well, we should probably talk more about these experiences in our social media discussions and at least forums like LinkedIn or Twitter and all, for sure. Yeah. I'm guilty of not sharing experiences. We should share more.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that we'll do. I think you're a member of the Fearless Female Leader LinkedIn group, and that if anyone watching is not involved in that, I would welcome you to that as well. And so more about that later, but let's just end with the piece on mentorship, because I think that everything that we've talked about is incredibly important. But let's say that we start to have a more diverse workplace and it's inclusive. But I think the mentorship piece that you brought up is so very important to nurture people all the way along, because it's not just about bringing them in, but it's about nurturing them so they can be our future leaders throughout the entire process. And it might be years or decades or long, but what do you have to say about getting this mentorship structure set up, and how and why is that important?
Mentorship, firstly, I'll just speak to the, my belief in the power of mentorship and the importance of actively looking out both for mentors for yourself and looking out for people that you can be a mentor to. And this, in my mind, applies to all, whether it's you are an emerging leader, you are an established leader, or you are a male ally, especially if we are talking about women. And so, number one is that. Number two is be willing to share your experiences. And I said that a few times already. Be willing to be vulnerable. You never know how sharing your story or one snippet of a story from your life or your career could change the direction of somebody else's life and inspire them. So, my call to action, my request to everybody is please raise your hand to be a mentor to someone, and also please look out for mentoring opportunities for yourself as well. We can grow at any stage of our career by learning from somebody. And these days the concept of reverse mentoring is also, maybe some of us have heard about it. Find a reverse mentor, somebody who's at a more junior career state than you, somebody who's younger than you, or somebody who comes from a completely different background that you would never even think of. So there is a ton of things that we can learn from them. In my case, I almost treat my own daughters, who are young adults now, as my mentors in many ways on how millennials work, how Gen Z work, and even at work now, I'm looking for and trying to engage with a reverse mentor for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that. And then to your question, Cheryl, about the structure for mentorship. Think there are a lot of opportunities available, but I haven't seen a lot of structured programs out there. There are far few and in between. Companies may have, or big employers like Microsoft have their own initiatives, own programs running. There are programs that are available out there on platforms like LinkedIn, but it is all up to us to create more structure around it, share what we are doing, and build more, because this is an area where there's a lot of opportunity out there available, and we haven't yet capitalized on the power of this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree 100%. So if there's one thing that you could leave people with to say, be sure, be sure in the coming weeks, you be sure to do this one thing, what would that be? What is just one thing that we can wrap our arms around that maybe we should be consistent doing, that we can start this week?
I'd say spend some time looking around you in whatever environment you are, and find somebody that you think can benefit from your experience, and determine to have a mentor, have them as a mentee for yourself. Even if it's one single session, even if it's 15 minutes of a conversation, like I said, it could change somebody's life. It could really, help them get into the right direction, which is best for them. So please do that. That's the bare minimum you can do within a few minutes of your life. And who knows, it may turn out into a bigger opportunity for you as well as for the other person.
Well, Sonia, there's no wonder why Microsoft is just doing so amazing. There's so many powerful leaders there like yourself that are ambitious, heart-centered leaders that are not just changing your company for the better, but also help to make the world a better place. I want to thank you so much for your time. I look forward to following you, and hopefully we'll be seeing you at Women in Cloud this week.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much again for having me.
It was a pleasure.